Hey y'all, I'm Dawn and welcome to Designs by Gaddis. If you love farmhouse decor on a budget, be sure to subscribe. I create high-end home decor with budget-friendly items I find at dollar stores, thrift stores, yard sales, and just about anywhere I can find a deal. Today I have some more high-end farmhouse decor DIYs that you will want to create for your home. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them below. Now for the first DIY. For this Kirkland's inspired DIY, I used a wood tray from Dollar Tree and painted it with 2 coats of white acrylic paint. I'm not going to bore you with the painting because I think we all know how to paint with a single color. While the paint dried, I used my Cricut and cut out this file from design bundles. I decided I wanted to stencil the tray instead of putting the vinyl on, so I used this orange vinyl, which I have a ton of and rarely use for projects. After cutting, weeding, and applying to transfer paper, I placed the stencil on the tray and removed all the air bubbles. And please excuse my head being all in the shot, but this is a Christmas gift for my niece and nephew, so I wanted it to be perfect. Next, I covered the stencil with Mod Podge so I could make sure the stencil cream didn't bleed under the stencil. Once the Mod Podge was good and dry, I used some black stencil cream and applied it to the stencil. And removed the stencil, trying my best not to get any of the black stencil cream on the tray. I washed my hands several times just to make sure, because y'all know how I love to make a mess when I'm creating. Once I got most of the bigger pieces of the vinyl off, I used a pair of tweezers and my Cricut weeding tool to remove the smaller pieces. Removing all the vinyl took me quite a while, but I think it was well worth it in the end. To touch up some of the areas, I used the same white acrylic paint and a small paintbrush to cover where the black cream had gotten. And then went back with black acrylic paint to fix any problems with the black. And I continued touching up until I thought it was perfect for a gift. The final step was to seal it. I used dishwasher safe Mod Podge and applied it to the entire tray, both the inside and the outside portions. And when I was finished, I have this adorable tray for my niece and nephew to put snacks on for Santa and its reindeers this Christmas Eve. Be sure to leave them below. Now for the first DIY. For this Kirkland's inspired DIY, I used a Dollar Tree frame and some scrapbook paper I found in my stash. I cut the scrapbook paper down so it would fit the frame by tracing around the piece of cardboard from inside of the frame and then simply cutting it with some scissors. I then placed the scrapbook paper into the frame and closed everything back up. I used my Cricut and cut out the phrase "Deck the Halls" from some black vinyl. After centering the vinyl and attaching it to the glass part of the frame, I removed the transfer paper. And just look at how high-end and cute this little Kirkland's-inspired frame turned out. Be sure to leave them below. Now for the first DIY. I used an SVG file from Design Bundles to create these adorable standing Christmas trees using my laser cutter. Once I had them sized and cut, I began by painting each of them. I painted one with gray, one black, and one white. Y'all know how I am with these colors. They are my favorites. And of course, you don't have to use these colors. Make them your own with your color scheme. You could even use scrapbook paper on them. Once the paint was dry, I used a white paint marker and put dots all over the gray tree. I used a silver paint marker on the black tree. And a black paint marker on the white tree. I used tumbling tower blocks to create the bases for the trees so they would stand up by themselves. I glued the tumbling tower blocks together with Dollar Tree wood glue. I placed a line of wood glue on the side of the block and then rubbed it with a wet finger and placed it next to the other block. I used a square to make sure the blocks were straight so they wouldn't be wonky looking. To hold the pieces into place I placed painter's tape around each set. After the glue had set up and dried, I removed the painter's tape and stained each set of blocks with antiquing wax using a baby wipe. Next, I stained 3 of these little Dollar Tree wood blocks the same way. I dried all the blocks with my heat gun and then began assembling each tree on its stand. I placed the small block towards the center of the base using hot glue, and then attached the tree to the block. I did the same thing with the other 2 trees, and just look at how stinking cute. I think this set of Christmas trees turned out so amazing. They are going to be perfect displayed along with the other Christmas decorations I have. Be sure to leave them below. Now for the first DIY. For this Kirkland's inspired DIY, I used these wooden Christmas trees from my stash. I got them from either Dollar Tree or Dollar General last year. I began by removing all the parts from the trees, like the hangers on the back and the florals on the front. I originally painted over the words of one tree, and you could still see the outline. I didn't want that showing, so I sanded the words off of the trees with some 220 grit sandpaper. I painted each of the trees with black acrylic paint. I used my Cricut and cut out the word Merry. I think I used the Arial font, but I'm not positive. I applied the letters to each of the trees. And then used an X-Acto knife to cut away the parts of the letters in the indentions of the tree. I placed 12 20mm wood beads on a skewer and painted them with black acrylic paint. I found that placing the beads on skewers is the easiest way to paint them without getting paint all over your hands. I still get paint on my fingers, but not everywhere like I have in the past. I drilled 2 holes towards the top of each tree so I could thread a string through them. And then place some painter's tape around some macrame cord. I worked from the end, stringing everything onto the cord. I placed 2 beads and then the letter starting with the Y. I threaded the trees by letting the cord run behind them instead of across the front. I thought this just looked better. I love how this merry banner turned out. Now, I just have to find somewhere to hang it since I don't have a mantle in my home. Be sure to leave them below. Now for the first DIY. I think this may be my favorite DIY. It turned out so amazing. I used this sign from my stash to copy a Kirkland's Christmas sign. I taped up the frame with painter's tape and then painted the inside with black acrylic paint. I glued 2 wood tags together. I used Gorilla Clear Grip glue for this, but you could use hot glue if you prefer. I decided I would stencil Mary onto the wood tags, but you could always just use the vinyl. After applying the vinyl stencils to the wood tags, I applied a thin layer of Mod Podge so the paint wouldn't leak under the letters. I then applied some black acrylic paint over the letters using a pouncing motion. After drying the paint with my heat gun, I removed the vinyl. I strung a bead and then a tag onto a piece of twine until I had all the tags on the twine. I found the center of the sign using a tape measure and placed a small pencil mark for reference. I eyeballed the center of the word Christmas and applied it to the lower portion of the sign. I arranged the twine, tags, and beads onto the top portion of the sign. Using a tape measure to keep the spacing between each tag close. I wasn't worried about it being perfect, but I didn't want it to look wonky. I then glued the tags into place with hot glue. I brought the twine up over the top of the sign and hot glued it to the back. And just look at how stinking cute. I can't wait to display this one. Please take a second to like this video and leave me a comment. This really helps my channel to grow so others just like yourself can find me. If you just found me, I hope you will join our little family by hitting the subscribe button. If you are already part of the family, thank you so much for your love and support. Y'all are the absolute best. Check out my new Amazon store for craft supply and farmhouse home decor recommendations. All the products I use from Amazon in my videos can be found there. Until next time, happy crafting!